Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name's Benjamin. When I let my wife's parents stay in my vacation cabin for the winter, I thought I was doing the right thing. Fast forward a few months, and I decided to make a completely unannounced visit to make sure everything was okay. When I got there, everything that used to have my name had been changed. When I confronted them, my wife's father said, "We made a few changes." I didn't argue. I knew what was going on, and what I did next was something none of them saw coming. What happened after changed everything, and I will be giving you all the details. I've been married to my wife, Allison, for 7 years now. She's an only child, and that detail alone shaped a lot more in our marriage than I ever expected it to. You see, Allison has spent most of her life trying to live up to her parents' expectations. And after we got married, it felt like she was always balancing on a tightrope, torn between standing by me as her husband and keeping her parents, especially her father, happy. Now, I don't come from money. I grew up in a modest but stable home. My parents worked hard for what we had. Allison, on the other hand, came from what I'd call an upper-middle-class family. Her parents weren't billionaires or anything, but they were well off. They'd already decided what success should look like, and I didn't fit the picture. From day one, it was clear they saw me as beneath her. They never said it outright, but you could observe it through the way they asked questions that were really judgments. When we were dating, they tried everything to pull her away, told her she was throwing away her future, settling too low, all that mess. The only reason they ended up accepting our relationship was because Allison, to her credit, stood firm. At one point, she even told them she'd leave and cut ties if they kept pushing. That's what finally made them back off and give us their blessing. But even after the wedding, they didn't accept me. There was always that unspoken message, "You're not really one of us." Over time, I got used to the comments. The passive-aggressive remarks from her father, the veiled critiques dressed up as advice. He once told me, during a family dinner, that I should feel grateful that Allison saw something in me. That wasn't a slip. That's how he sees me. And every time I brought it up to Allison, she tried to walk the middle. She didn't want to upset me, but she couldn't confront them either. She'd say things like, "That's just how my dad is," or "He didn't mean it that way." And I get it. No one wants to be caught between the person they married and the people who raised them. But still, it wore on me. Despite all that, our marriage had its peace. We didn't argue much about us. We supported each other. The one thing that weighed heavily on us, though, was our struggle to have children. We've been trying for years, going to fertility clinics, running tests, trying different treatments. It hasn't been easy. There were months where we'd get our hopes up, only for reality to hit again. It brought us closer in some ways, but it also made certain silences heavier, especially around her parents, who'd subtly hint at when we'd give them grandkids, not knowing or caring how hard we were trying behind the scenes. So yeah, from the outside, it looked like we had it all together. But underneath that, there were cracks forming. And those cracks? They were about to split wide open. 2 years ago, my business did well. And for the first time in my adult life, I had the kind of breathing room most people only hope for. I wasn't rich beyond measure, but I had enough to finally do something for myself that I dreamed about since I was a kid. See, when I was growing up, we didn't have much. We were comfortable, sure, but far from wealthy. But I always remembered how some of the kids in my high school, especially the ones whose families had money, would head out to their parents' cabins for long weekends, holidays, and school breaks. You'd hear them talk about the interesting things they did, and I used to sit there and think, man, I wish I could have that. But we couldn't. It just wasn't in the cards for us. That dream stuck with me. I didn't talk about it much, but I carried quietly, and I told myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd give myself that experience. So, when I finally had the means, I started looking around. I found a beautiful, modest, but cozy cabin up north. A 2-bedroom, a stone fireplace, wooden beams, and a view that made you stop and breathe a little slower. I pictured myself spending quiet weekends there in the winter, probably sharing it with Allison or hosting friends, and even way down the line, retiring there. It was peaceful and full of potential. Before finalizing the purchase, I did everything by the book. I got my lawyer involved. I made sure the deed, the title, and all ownership documents were in my name. I wanted the paperwork to reflect that clearly, even if I didn't care about this then. Allison didn't contribute a single cent to the purchase, and that was fine by me. I never expected her to. But the moment she saw the place, she lit up. She loved it. And I was glad she did. At first, she started calling it our cabin. I didn't mind that. We were married. What's mine is hers, right? But over time, her wording changed subtly. It wasn't just our cabin anymore. It became our family's cabin. The shift seemed harmless on the surface, just a figure of speech, maybe even endearing. But I never imagined it would turn into anything more than that. So, everything seemed calm after I bought the cabin. For the first year or so, it was exactly what I dreamed it would be. I didn't go up there every weekend, but just knowing it was mine meant something. Last winter, Allison's parents, who are both retired, ran into a housing snag. They were finally starting the full renovation of their home. With the whole place basically stripped down to the studs, they needed somewhere to stay for the season. That's when Allison asked if they could use the cabin. At the time, it seemed like a fair enough request. I won't pretend I was thrilled about it. I had my reservations, but I also wasn't trying to stir up tension. I saw it as a goodwill gesture, a chance to maybe smooth things over with them. Besides, I wasn't planning to use the cabin much that winter anyway. So I said yes, but with one condition. I told Allison I thought we should draft a simple use agreement. Just a clear, basic document that outlined how long her parents would be staying, what they could or couldn't change, and made sure everything was understood on both sides. But the moment I said agreement, Allison pushed back hard. She looked at me like I was trying to serve her parents a legal notice. Said it made things feel transactional. They're not renters, Ben, she said. They're family. Why are you being so legalistic about this? I tried to weigh the situation. I didn't want to offend them or her. And I thought giving them the benefit of the doubt would finally earn me a little grace in her father's eyes. So I dropped it. I handed them the keys with a smile and told myself I was doing the right thing. In hindsight, that was the moment I gave up more than just a set of keys, and I did it with blind trust. That was the goodwill that backfired. So, a few weeks after they moved in that winter season, I got a message from one of the neighbors up near the cabin. We weren't exactly close, but over the years we'd exchanged numbers just in case. The text read, "Hey, just a heads up. Contractors have been coming by your place the past few days. Looks like they're installing new windows or something." I remember staring at that message for a while. New windows? I hadn't approved any work on the cabin. I hadn't even planned any maintenance for that season. So I brought it up with Allison later that evening. I asked her if her parents had mentioned any renovations. She didn't even look up from her phone. Just said, "Oh, that's just my dad helping out. He thought some of the windows were outdated, so he's swapping a few of them out. You know how he is, always fixing things." Now, in any other situation, that might have been the end of it. But I had this nagging feeling that something was up. But with how easily she said it, I swallowed my doubt and moved on. Then, about a week later, I got an envelope from the county office. Inside was a document referring to a change of correspondence address for the cabin. The letter said that the mailing address for all property-related notices for my cabin had been successfully updated. I sat there on the couch, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Who would need to change the address? And why? I hadn't requested anything. The cabin was under my name. So I showed the letter to Allison, asking if her parents had mentioned anything about it. She barely blinked. Her mom probably just changed it to make organizing the bills easier. "Nothing to worry about," she said. "It's just my mom being my mom." At that point, something in my chest tightened. Every red flag was fluttering quietly in the background, but I ignored them. I wanted to believe that my wife wouldn't let her parents cross a line. I wanted to believe that her reassurances meant something. So I chose to trust her. I buried the discomfort. I reminded myself that these were her parents, not strangers. I didn't believe anything serious could go wrong. So, 2 months after I let my in-laws stay at the cabin for the winter, I decided to take a weekend trip up there with no warning. Something in my gut had been bothering me for a while. I told myself I just wanted to check on the place, probably clear my head. When I pulled into the driveway, I barely recognized the place. The siding was different. New windows, different curtains, a fresh coat of paint I never approved. And that was just outside. The real shock came when I opened the front door. There was nobody inside when I got there. I stood in the living room, mouth slightly open. Nearly everything I had picked out and paid for, the handcrafted dining table, the rustic lighting fixtures, the leather recliner I saved up for, are all gone. Replaced with things that screamed my in-laws' taste. Not a single item felt like it belonged to me anymore. Even the photos I hung were replaced with framed art I'd never seen. I walked from room to room. It felt like someone had taken over my home. And that's when I decided to check something. In the back corner of the master bedroom closet, hidden behind a false panel, I had a small fireproof safe. I had put it there when I bought the cabin, just in case. Only my wife and I knew about it. It held copies of the deed, closing documents, and a few personal notes. I opened the safe and couldn't find the documents there. The new document there didn't have my name on it. It wasn't hard to realize that the ownership had been transferred. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few seconds, trying to slow my breathing. The sheer audacity that they could go behind my back and do something like this. I called Allison, told her to come to the cabin. Within hours before she arrived, her parents came back. They said they went to visit a new friend nearby. I kept my cool. When everyone was present, I just asked, "Why did you guys change the ownership without my signature?" My wife stared at the papers in my hand while being completely quiet, and her silence said more than any excuse could have. Then her father told me they added the cabin to their family trust just to protect the property, he said, like it was some kind of kind gesture. Allison, finally speaking up, echoed his words. Said it was the best way to safeguard the cabin as a family asset. Her voice was soft, like they talked about this without me. I opened my mouth to ask how they even managed this without my signature, because legally, that shouldn't be possible. But the moment the question started to form, I stopped myself. I looked at Allison. I looked at her parents. And I realized something I should have accepted long ago. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A deliberate move, carried out quietly, and dressed up as family unity. And in that moment, I understood exactly what they thought of me. So I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove away because I knew what I had to do next. And they were not going to see it coming. So while I was driving back from a cabin, I called my lawyer. I didn't even wait to get home because I knew something was deeply wrong. As soon as he picked up, I told him everything I had seen. The changed furniture, the missing safe copy, the conversation with Allison's parents, and the way they talked like they had done me a favor by transferring the ownership. My lawyer immediately said, "Benjamin, that's not just sketchy. That's criminal. You can't transfer a deed, especially a sole owner deed, without the actual owner's signed consent." He told me that the only way something like that could have gone through is if someone had either impersonated me or forged my signature. He told me to go straight home, check every original document I had, and send everything to him immediately. If what I was saying was true, we were looking at a felony case. When I finally pulled into my driveway and stepped into the house, I went straight for the fireproof safe in the closet. I had that safe installed when I first started my business. Inside were documents I never thought I'd need to defend like this. And there it was, the original purchase agreement for the cabin, notarized, with my full legal name as the sole owner. I reread it just to be sure I wasn't missing anything. Everything that was signed and sealed when the sale went through. I also had a photo I had taken with the real estate agent the day I bought the place. We were standing in front of the cabin, both smiling, and I was holding a big red sold sign. I sat down at the dining table and scanned every page, then sent the entire folder to my lawyer with a message. "Let's go." He didn't waste a second. Within hours, he filed with the county clerk's office and the property records department, notifying them of a fraudulent ownership change. He included the original deed, the purchase records, and the scanned documents proving I had never authorized any transfer. Then came the next step, legal action. He filed a formal lawsuit against Allison's parents for forgery and impersonation. These weren't just civil offenses. We were talking about real consequences. Jail time, fines, and public record of fraud. Maybe they assumed I'd either be too passive, too family loyal, or too naive to fight back. But they were wrong. I wasn't raised to be loud, but I was raised to be thorough. And now, it was my turn to let the system speak on my behalf. I knew the moment Allison found out what I had done, things wouldn't stay calm, and that was what happened. She came storming into the living room the day her parents got the court order. The first words out of her mouth were, "How could you do this to my parents?" she shouted. "You actually sued them? You called the county?" I didn't respond right away. I was done pretending that keeping the peace meant sacrificing my self-respect. "Allison," I said, my voice steady, "they forged my signature. They impersonated me. They tried to steal my property. That's not family business. That's a felony." But she didn't want logic. She wanted me to feel guilty for protecting myself. "You're trying to destroy my family," she snapped. "You've always had a problem with them, and now you've gone too far. You've declared war on them." I stood up and told her, "If you're tired of this marriage, I will gladly end it." That sentence landed, and everything stopped. She was stunned. Her mouth opened slightly like she had something to say, but no words came out. For the first time since this mess started, she didn't have a comeback. I walked away. So, the case ended up going to court. My lawyer laid out the evidence with precision. And we had the records of the fraudulent filings that came afterward. Everything lined up. The judge didn't need long. It was clear what had happened. My signature had been forged. The property had been illegally moved into a trust that I never authorized. And someone had gone to great lengths to try and erase me from my own investment. The verdict? Ownership of the cabin was restored to me immediately. Allison's parents were found guilty of fraud. The court ordered them to pay restitution and legal fees. They faced legal consequences that hit hard, not just financially, but socially. For people who prided themselves on their pristine reputation and family image, the scandal left a deep crack in that polished facade. At home, things got darker. Allison, my wife, didn't apologize. Instead, she boiled with rage, directing all of it at me. She accused me of humiliating her family, of overreacting, of making everything public. According to her, I should have just let it go and handled it quietly. I listened and said, "If this is how you think a marriage works, if this is what you call love, then you're free to leave. And honestly, I think you should." She didn't argue. She packed a few things, called someone to pick her up, and went back to her parents' house. A few days later, I filed for divorce. I did it because sometimes love isn't enough when trust has been broken on so many levels. When a man is met with betrayal from the people who should have stood beside him, the only real choice left is to walk away. As I battle my wife in court, here are what I've learned. And if you're dating or even newly married, I hope you really hear this. You don't have to stay in a family that doesn't accept you. For 7 years, I tried. I told myself it would get better. It didn't. It got worse. If you're constantly walking on eggshells just to keep the peace, ask yourself if you're really being respected or just being tolerated. Another lesson is you don't have to trust blindly. I let my guard down because I thought love meant full trust with no questions asked. I thought that doing things the family way meant compromising some of my instincts. There's nothing wrong with setting clear boundaries. There's nothing wrong with writing things down, signing agreements, or making sure you're not being taken advantage of. Love should never mean abandoning your sense. The last lesson is, if someone betrays your trust, don't just let it slide. Make sure they pay through the proper legal authorities. I'm not talking about revenge. I'm talking about accountability. Thanks for watching. If this story spoke to you, please like and share. It might help someone else too. Take care.